Hi everybody, welcome back to the Tinfoil Hat Christian. If you're new here, my name is Susan. I'm so glad you decided to join us today. Before we get started on today's topic, I want to go ahead and give you guys the gospel. The gospel is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 1 through 4, which states that Jesus came from heaven, was born of a virgin, and died on the cross for our sins. I'm going to go ahead and give a link in the description box regarding that statement, and also a prayer that you can pray if you are interested in being saved, and more information on that. So go ahead and take a look at that at the end of the video if you'd like to. So today's topic is going to be the Great Reset, and to go ahead and get started in that, we have quite a bit to talk about. All right, so we are going to start with this article from the World Economic Forum website. This article is their description rather of the Great Reset. So what the Great Reset really refers to is, I guess, more or less a description of what the UN and the World Economic Forum want us to go to, and us being the world, to go to post-COVID, or really during COVID-19, and also post-COVID-19, as far as climate change, and as far as how our entire world is managed and operated financially, and really socially as well. But that's a really broad statement. So rather than trying to describe that myself, I'm going to just kind of show this to you, because I'm going to show this to you based on what the UN has said, and then based on what evidence we can find for what everyone else has said, because the UN has given us a very broad statement, and at least as far as what we can find of it, and then everything else has boiled down to rumor and or statements by different officials. So but the UN hasn't come out and said it yet. Their next conference was supposed to be in January, but it's been pushed back to May, which I guess is when they are going to come back and actually put out what they intend to do. So we're going to start with this article from the UN and kind of move forward from there. So I'm going to pull this up. We're going to kind of skate down through this article to the pertinent areas. So as far as the UN is concerned, they have two reasons for this. As I mentioned, the Great Reset is needed, right, for because of COVID-19 and because of climate change. Now, you're going to have a lot of other people that are going to tell you that COVID-19 is really the excuse they needed in order to push this through. As far as my opinion, there's probably some truth to that. You'll see why as we kind of move forward and talk about this a little bit further, when we get into what some of the politicians are saying is actually part of this reset. But you're not going to find those details on the UN website, or at least if you can find them, I'll be proud of you, because as far as if those details are in there, they're so mired in all of the different white papers and things that they have. I couldn't find them. They are buried. So let's go in and show what I could find. What I could find is highlighted here on this article. As far as what they're willing to put out for us, and it's easy to find, the reset agenda is going to have three main components. The first component is going to talk about the market, and they want to steer it towards what they are calling fairer outcomes. And what that's defined as far as fairer outcomes, governments should improve coordination, and that is supposed to be fairer taxes, regulatory and fiscal policies, upgraded trade agreements, create the conditions for a stakeholder economy, at a time of diminishing tax bases and soaring public debt. They also feel like governments should implement long overdue reforms that promote more equitable outcomes. Depending on the country, they may include wealth taxes, the withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, and new rules governing intellectual property, trade, and competition. Okay, so wealth taxes, which essentially sounds like increased wealth taxes, well, a lot of increasing in taxes for those who are over a certain threshold. Withdrawal of fossil fuel subsidies, which means definitely they're going to do what they can to limit fossil fuels. I'm not sure what the rules governing intellectual property and trade and competition are going to be or turn out to, unless they are going to come out with that later. Trade arrangements and fiscal policy, probably going to have something to do with taxes as well. The second component of the Great Reset agenda would ensure that investments advance shared goals such as equality and sustainability. Large-scale spending programs that many governments are implementing represent major opportunity for progress. The European Commission has unveiled plans for 750 billion pounds or $826 billion recovery fund, and the US, China, and Japan have the same ambitious economic stimulus plans. What they're recommending is, rather than using those to plug old systems, they want us to create one, the Green New Deal. That's what they're talking about. So they're pushing climate change using those stimulus packages rather than towards economic stimulus packages. They are pushing, they're pushing us and other countries to use the United States and other countries to use those funds towards Green New Deals, fixing urban infrastructures and other types of industries to fix the environmental climate change type problems that we're having, and other social problems. And then the final priority of the Great Reset is meant to harness the innovations of the fourth industrial revolution to support the public good, especially by addressing health and social challenges. So for this, they're talking about diagnostics, therapeutics, and possible vaccines, establish testing centers, create mechanisms for tracing infections, and deliver telemedicine. Imagine what could be possible if similar concerted efforts were made in every sector. So I didn't realize that that was a fourth industrial revolution. Clearly they feel like it is. So that's what the Great Reset is according to the UN. It is it looks like it's a huge financial push towards social contracts, towards climate change, towards a lot of COVID-19 concerns. So that's according to the UN. So if you notice, that's very vague, I would say. I mean, it's a lot of information, but it's very vague as far as how that's all going to be planned out and how it's all going to be implemented. So that is what the UN is saying. I imagine they're going to have more information during the Davos conference in May, but as of right now, this is what they have. Now, there are folks out there who have or appear to have more information. So we're going to start going towards that direction right now. I have here an article from Tucker Carlson, who has a few quotes from some world leaders. Some of the people that he quotes, for example, are Justin Trudeau over in Canada, who is really behind this this Great Reset. I will also add, even though it's not mentioned in this article, that Prince Charles in the UK is also behind this. I do believe he's also joined by the Australian and New Zealand heads of state, so that I know for sure. But Justin Trudeau is particularly quoted here. He's quoted as saying, "This is our chance." He's also, he says this is our chance. He's very excited about this. Who else is this? Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, has also been quoted as saying this pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. So yeah, so these are all major world leaders that are all behind this, that have all been very excited. Again, Tucker says, what changes is Schwab talking about? We don't know. What we're certain of is that you're going to pay for them and the people in charge will benefit from them, end quote. So that is what Tucker Carlson has to say about it. But what he also references is Cardinal Vigano, who is, if you're not aware, the former nuncio for the United States from the Catholic Church. He actually wrote President Trump regarding the Great Reset and had quite a bit to say about it. So I'm going to go over to his article, his letter that he wrote to President Trump. He had quite a bit to say about it and actually seemed to have quite a bit more information than anyone else that I've been able to find. And his information, honestly, was a little bit terrifying. So I'm going to go ahead and read from this. I'm going to go ahead and read as close to word for word as I can here. This is what Cardinal Vigano has to say. A global plan called the Great Reset is underway. Its architect is a global elite that wants to subdue all of humanity, imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations. In several nations, this plan has already been approved and financed. In others, it is still in an early stage. Behind the world leaders, who are the accomplices and executors of this infernal project, there are unscrupulous characters who finance the purpose of the great, looks like it's cut off a little bit. So let's skip down a bit. All right, so, oh, it is cut off a little bit. My apologies. All right, so we'll skip down. Looks like there is the price of these concessions from the International Monetary Fund will be renunciation of private property and adherence to a program of vaccination against COVID-19 and COVID-21 promoted by Bill Gates with the collaboration of the main pharmaceutical groups. Beyond the enormous economic interests that motivate the promoters of the Great Reset, the imposition of the vaccination will be accompanied by the requirement of a health passport and a digital ID, with the consequent contact tracing of the population of the entire world. Those who do not accept these measures will be confined in detention camps or placed under house arrest, and all their assets will be confiscated. He goes on to say, Mr. President, I imagine that you are already aware that in some countries the Great Reset will be activated between the end of this year and the first trimester of 2021. For this purpose, further lockdowns are planned, which will be officially justified by a supposed second and third wave of the pandemic. You are well aware of the means that have been deployed to sow panic and legitimize draconian limitations on individual liberties, artfully provoking a worldwide economic crisis. In the intentions of its architects, this crisis will serve to make the recourse of nations to the Great Reset irreversible, thereby giving the final blow to a world whose existence and very memory they want to completely cancel. But this world, Mr. President, includes people, affections, institutions, faith, culture, traditions, and ideals, people and values that do not act like automatons, who do not obey like machines, because they are endowed with a soul and a heart, because they are tied together by a spiritual bond that draws its strength from above, from that God that our adversaries want to challenge, just as Lucifer did at the beginning of time with his non serviam. So that's a lot. So that's coming from the Cardinal Vigano. So he seems to know quite a bit. And that would be less terrifying if I didn't already have a different article that I had gotten about a month ago from a separate or separate publication called the, forgive me if I am mispronouncing this, from the Cairns News, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is a publication from Australia discussing discussing a whistleblower from Canada who was, I guess, in the know regarding an email and a roadmap for, I guess, what's going to go on in there regarding the reset and what Mr. Trudeau was talking about in his comments for their country. So here we are talking about their country, and we can already see that some of this has happened. So I will discuss that. They are, let's see, here we go. Phase in secondary lockdown restrictions on a rolling basis, starting with major metropolitan areas first and expanding outward, expected by November 2020. Then we go to rush the acquisition of or construction of isolation facilities across every province and territory, expected by December 2020, which I already have heard is happening. Daily new cases of COVID-19 will surge beyond capacity of testing, including increases in COVID-related deaths following the same growth curves, expected by end of November 2020. Complete and total secondary lockdown, much stricter than the first and second rolling phase restrictions, expected by end of December 2020. Early January 2021, reform and expansion of the unemployment program to be transitioned into the Universal Basic Income Program, expected by Q1 2021. Projected COVID-19 mutation and or co-infection with secondary virus, referred to as COVID-21, leading to a third wave with much higher mortality rate and higher rate of infection, expected by February 2021. Daily new cases of COVID-21 hospitalizations and COVID-19 and COVID-21 related deaths will exceed medical care facilities capacity, expected Q1 through Q2 of 2021. Enhanced lockdown restrictions, referred to as third lockdown, will be implemented. Full travel restrictions will be imposed, including inter-province and inter-city, expected Q2 2021. Transitioning of individuals into the Universal Basic Income Program, expected mid-Q2 2021. Projected supply chain breakdowns, inventory shortages, large economic instability, expected late Q2 2021. Deployment of military personnel into major metropolitan areas as well as all major roadways to establish travel checkpoints. Restrict travel and movement. Provide logistical support to the area, expected by Q3 2021. The whistleblower said committee members who asked who would become the owner of the forfeited property and assets in that scenario and what would happen to lenders or financial institutions, we were simply told the World Debt Reset Program will handle all of the details. Several committee members were also questioned what would happen to individuals if they refused to participate in the World Debt Reset Program or the Health Pass or the vaccination schedule, and the answer that we got was very troubling. Essentially, we were told it was our duty to make sure we came up with a plan to ensure that would never happen. We were told it was in the individual's best interest to participate. So, the Great Reset. So that article, which came out, let's see if I have a date on this, October the 16th, that article that came out October the 16th backs up the Cardinals' comments to the President of the United States on October the 25th. So we have basically what's on the UN's website regarding the Great Reset, which is touted as this wonderful, very vague push to handle all of the horrible things that have happened with COVID-19, as well as climate change. Then we have kind of the vague reference by Tucker Carlson, this is probably not a good thing, but we don't really know what's going on with it. And then now we have the two references of the whistleblower in Canada and then the cardinal who wrote an open letter to the president outlining what he had determined about the Great Reset. So I'm thinking, this is probably a wake-up call. Definitely not the best thing out there for us to be dealing with. So going back to my original conversation, or my original reference at the beginning of this video, now is the time for us to be looking at salvation. It most definitely is. If you have considered it at all, maybe now is the time to reconsider it. Please take a look at your Bible. If you're at all uncertain, please reach out to someone, reach out to me, reach out to anybody. Read your Bible, look on the internet. It's not too late. Yeah, definitely. Reach out to anyone, because the time is now for salvation, always. And that said, I think this is going to be the end of this topic. I'll be back soon with the next one. Until then, everybody, be blessed.